so we're here in lesson 3, setting up an invader sprite. So our goals for this lesson is to have an invader that moves left to right, an invader sprite that drops down when it gets to either boundary, by boundary meaning the left or the right side of the screen, and we should post a link to our work as usual for the purposes of discussion. Alright, so let's get into it. I'm going to have three invaders, and I'm going to be able to get them to move from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, drop, then change directions and come back. So my group of three invaders will be doing this sort of motion by the time I'm done with this lesson. All right, so the first thing I need to get is I need to get the invader sprite. So where would I pick that object up? Now we could do you could revisit the Schoology page and we could download these images one at a time and then upload them into the Schoology folder, or we could use what's already prepared for us. If I would go into the resources folder and I would click this link, Space Invaders Resources. I have this project that I've put together that's just a bunch of sprites as we have demonstrated before. So I will go ahead and click see inside. And these are the three invaders that I'm going to use because I want to stay with the retro look for the game. If you are using the more up-to-date Space Invaders, you could go ahead and grab these images. These images will be the newer, more vector graphics version of the original. So I'm going to stay with the retro look by using these three invaders. So I would just simply open my backpack. I would go to Invader 1-1, 2-1, and 3-1 and drag each into my backpack. And I'm done. Now I would just go back to my Scratch project, open this backpack, and it's not showing anywhere. So what I need to do is, as usual, reload the page, then open the backpack, and there they are. So I will just simply drag them in to my project. 1-1, 2-1, and 3-1. Alright, so they are this sizes. I like the size they are, so I'm not going to do any resizing. Um, and they come with a piece of code. So the code is to animate them. So this lets me change the costume. They each contain two costumes. So when they're animated, they will have this sort of motion. All right. All right. So my first thing I'm going to do is put them in their starting location. So I'm going to have this is my 1-1. So that's right at the top, followed by 2-1, followed by 3-1. Now this is just me dragging them and placing them on the stage, but we're going to be a little bit more precise by giving them their starting locations in code. So what I want to do when my game starts, so I'm going to go to event for this object 1-1. When the game starts, I want to go to a particular location. So that's motion, go to XY. Right now it's set to -216, 123. So I'm going to make those numbers a little bit more easier to remember. I'll say -210 and my Y value is 120. Those are a lot easier to remember. Alright, so when my game starts up, I want this object to jump to that location and I want it to become visible just in case it was hidden before. Show. Alright, so the next thing I need to do, I need to make this object move to the right. Okay, so anytime motion is happening inside of Scratch, that is, it tells us that there is a loop going on. And I'll pull the forever loop because I don't want it to stop halfway in the screen and start messing around with numbers. So I won't use a repeat block. I would use a forever block. So forever, I want you to start moving until you get to the right side of the screen. And moving would be on the motion. So move 10 steps. Okay, so if I would hit the play button, we would notice that this object will move until it gets to the right, just like so. And then it gets stuck over there. Alright, so if I hit the play button again, it jumps back to its start location, and it does this. That's the only instructions it has at the moment. Okay, so 10 tells us to move in the positive direction, the positive X direction, 10 steps. Now, To change direction, we need to move back in the negative direction. So that's going to be negative 10 steps. But before we get there, we need to be able to figure out how, what's the trigger for the right side of the screen? How does the object tell that it got to the right side of the screen? So if I would move my mouse back and forth, as you would notice, left to right, there's these numbers that's changing at the bottom of the screen. So moving left to right means there's a change in the X value. The Y value doesn't stay, it stays the same, it doesn't change. So if I would move left to right, my X value is changing. And when I get all the way to the right, my X value is around 230. It's just like the previous example when we were working with the Canon. So I would say if my X value turns out to be bigger than, let's say, 230, I need to stop and change directions. So if my X value is bigger than 230, I said X value is found on the motion, so that's X position. Snap that in. Now we want to be able to snap in the X position bigger than 230 into the if condition. And let's get rid of this. And what happens is when it gets to the right side of the screen, we want to broadcast a message. We want this object, the 1-1 object, to alert the system, or we want it to say something that is like along the lines like, hey, I got to the right side of the screen. So that's what a broadcast is about. So we go ahead and click on events and pull broadcast out. And we want to broadcast a message. And the message I want to broadcast would be something that is going to be like right side. And my capitalization is, this is deliberate. So when we have multiple words, we make the first word lowercase and the second word uppercase with no space between it. All right, so that's a deliberate, that's not a typo. All right, so I want to broadcast right side once my object gets to the right side. So I would snap that in. And I want to repeat these steps for the left side of the screen. So I could go ahead and click Control, pull out another if condition, click operators, pull out the less than operator, go to motion, pull out X position, and I'm going to snap X position in the first gap, and I'm going to type the opposite, which is negative 230, and I'll pick up this green block once again and snap that into my if position. And finally, if condition, I will go to events, I will pull out the broadcast, and now I will change the message to read left side. Okay, snap that in. So if my position is bigger than 230, broadcast the message. If my position is less than negative 230, broadcast the message. I'll join these if conditions together, and I would snap that inside the forever. Now, I am going to make a slight change to this group right here that says move 10 steps. Now, when the game starts, I want to have something that we call initialization. Initialization sets up all the parameters for the game, all the values for the game. So one of the values that I'm interested in setting up is I want to tell all my objects that are invaders to start moving to the right. So that's a direction. So I'm going to go into data, I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to name it direction. Right? Direction, or you could name it speed if you like, because in this game, direction and speed are meshed together. So I'll call it direction for now to keep it simple. Click OK. And when my game starts, I want my direction to be set to 0. But where would I put this block? Would I put it in every invader? It's going to be kind of wasteful. So we're going to begin by doing painting a new sprite. And this sprite is going to be empty. There's going to be no graphics in it. There's going to be no costumes whatsoever. All I'm interested in this sprite is setting up instructions. And the instructions in this sprite would read, when game starts, when the flag is clicked, all I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and click on data. I want to set the direction to 0. All right, set the direction to 10, pardon me. Okay. Now we'll be revisiting this sprite a lot. The sprite is a really important sprite for our game, and most video games have something in it that is named an engine. So this is going to be driving a lot of the, it's like the heartbeat of the game. It's going to be driving a lot of the instruction, a lot of the logic. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this sprite to engine, game engine if you like. Let's name it game engine. So in the game engine, which is what I'll be referring to it from now on, we have when the flag is clicked, direction is set to 10. Right, so initially all my objects are going to be moving in that direction. Now let's revisit Invader 1-1, and we need to know what to do um, when broadcast left and broadcast right is happening. But I said I'm going to make a small change to this move 10 steps. In place of the number 10, I'm going to go ahead and grab this bubble direction and snap that in. Okay. And I do not need to see the direction variable on the screen, so there's a checkbox next to it. So uncheck it and it disappears. Good. So this is done. This is as far as I need to take it. If I get to the right, broadcast a message. If I get to the left, broadcast a message. Now, what to do once that message has been broadcast? I will go and say, well, when I receive, so that's on the event. When I receive left side, I need to do something, and when I receive right side, I need to do something. All right. The something I need to do is drop and change to the opposite direction. So when I receive right side, let's do the right side first. I need to change my direction to the opposite direction. So go to data, pull out set direction, and since I'm at the right side, I now need to be moving to the left, and that's -10. All right, I also need to drop down a little bit, so I'm gonna go to motion and I'll pull out the change Y. Since we're going down, it's a coordinate axis. Down would be -Y, right? -10. Then we move down on the graph paper, for example, we're moving in the negative direction. Snap that in. All right, so when I get to the right side, these are the two actions that want to happen for my object. When I get to the left side, I'm going to have a repeat of these two instructions: a set direction and change Y instruction. Change Y by -10 because we want it to drop. And now we at the left side of the screen, we want to start moving to the right side of the screen. Snap that in. So these two are going to be responsible for changing that number in there. That bubble that we just dropped in is going to be controlled by these two groups of information. If you're at the left side, that number is now going to be 10. If you're at the right side, that number is going to be -10. And we could go ahead and test that. Let's clean these blocks up so everything snaps into place. There's no overlapping blocks. I hit the flag, and this is what I would see. That one invader is behaving perfectly. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and map these instructions to the remaining invaders. And I could do that simply by just grabbing each of these blocks and dropping them, pardon me, into the remaining invaders. Now I created this block already exists, so I'm going to grab this, drop it in. I will grab this, drop it in, and so forth. Okay, so now we have a bunch of overlapping blocks. I will right click and choose clean up, and it spreads it out. I want to kind of like mimic the way these blocks look. So I'm going to put left side a little bit down. The reason for doing it this way is when we have a bunch of invaders, well, because we're going to have 21 of these objects, we want to quickly click through them so we could scan for differences. We have when they're all aligned the same way, we could quickly spot errors. I'll do the same for this guy really quickly. Move this down. And you don't have to follow my layout by any chance, by any means. You could use your own layout, but it's a great idea to keep them looking the same. All right, if you notice that these are slightly different, my animation is slightly different from this one. So it's once again proving my point that you could quickly spot differences. All right, so there's two show buttons in here. We don't need two show buttons. Only one is necessary. I could get rid of that. Clean up again, and now when I click between them, they look virtually identical. All right, so if I hit the flag, they will all stack together and move as a group. That's the problem. They're still moving correctly, but they're all sitting on top of each other. So we want to be able to spread these invaders out. So click on 1-1. That's its start location, -210, 120. But that's the same start location for Invader 2-1. So we want them to be right above each other. They're going to have the same X value. if they're in the same column, but the y value is going to be different. So let's say we spread them out there 30 apart. So the next value down, 30 units down, will be 90. And for this guy, 30 units down from 90 will be 60. So I'll go ahead and hit the flag, and there we go. It's all spread out very nicely. They're all moving together. They're listening to each other's instructions. They're broadcasting, so on and so forth. Okay, good. So the demo works. Okay, let's take a look at our instructions and let's see if we have met the goals. So it's module one, setting up the invader sprite. My goals: an invader sprite that drops down when it gets to either boundary, check. An invader that moves left to right, check. Now we're going to post a link for the purposes of the discussion, and we are done with this lesson. See you in lesson 4.